Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about how do we analyze data. We have two types of data, categorical and numerical. And the quantity of interest for categorical data we would like to investigate the proportion. When it comes to numerical data, we will investigate the mean. So for population parameter, we use P, and for sample statistic, we use p hat. And for mean numerical data, we are more interested in the mean. Mean means average. And for population mean, we use mu. This is a Greek letter mu. And then for sample statistic is x bar. Okay, so these notations are very important because it helps you to identify when we're talking about proportion. Is this for the population proportion? Remember, population means all of the data. And then p hat is the sample proportion, which is a portion of the population data. This is only a portion. Okay, or sum, or the sample. Okay, so data connection principle. For example, researchers are interested in the percentage of people in a city that support a new recycling law. Draw and label a picture to represent the population, sample, and parameter and statistic. In our early video, we talked about what's the difference between population and sample. In here, I would like to do some quick review. So population is a group of a phenomenon that have something in common. So sample is a small group or a subset of member of a population selected to represent the population. And we talked about that earlier. Population is very nice, but hard to find and not realistic. Whereas sample is more attainable and more realistic. But we need to be careful when we try to sampling. We want to select the sample who can represent the population. Okay. Now, next. So for a parameter, we have P and P hat statistic. For parameter with a P and a mu. So parameter in here is a characteristic of population. So we use proportion for categorical data and the mean for numerical data. And for statistic, is a characteristic of a sample, and we will use p hat for the sample proportion and x bar for the sample mean. Okay. So here it states that researchers are interested in the percentage of people in a city So what they want to know is the people in the, let me use different color pen. So what people interested in is the people in the city that support the new recycling law. So our population is going to be all of the people in the city, right? This is going to be your population. And then among those population, it's very hard to find everyone in the city and get their opinion about do they support the new recycling law or not. So to be more realistic, we want to survey some cities, maybe a people who read certain newspaper or go to some website. We want to survey maybe 100 people. Let me use different colors pen. We might want to survey 100 people and ask them, hey, do you support the new recycling law or not? So those 100 people is going to be our sample. Okay, so now we already know which is sample, which is population. Now we need to know the parameter and statistic. So you want to know people's opinion, right? So when it comes to people's opinion, you only have two answers, yes, or three actually, or no, they either support it or they don't support it, or another opinion is they don't have opinion, right? Or give up their opinion. Don't have opinion. So this is not a numerical data, right? When we connect them, this is going to be a regular categorical data. So if this is a categorical data, that means when we invest them again, for population, we're going to invest their proportion. So that means when it comes to the parameter, oops. When it comes to the parameter, this is going to be a population proportion, P. And then when it comes to the statistic parameter, this is going to be, when it comes to the statistic, this is going to be P hat, which is the sample proportion and population proportion. This is population proportion. Okay. Now, here is another example. So researchers are interested on the average days on shelf life for an apple at Trader Joe's in Olympia. Draw and label a picture to represent the population, the sample and parameter, and the statistic. So in this case, what they are trying to invest, they want to invest apples at Trader Joe's in Olympia. So luckily we only have one Trader Joe, but still it's very unrealistic for us to keep track on every single apples in Olympia. So our population is going to be all of the apples in Olympia Oh, I'm sorry, all apples at Trader Joe's, not in Olympia. At Trader Joe's. And we're trying to investigate their shelf life. Remember that when it comes to shelf life, you think about, hey, some apples 3 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. So look, this is a number and it makes sense for them to add and subtract. So that means this is going to be a numerical data. So when we invest in numerical data, the quantity of interest we are interested in is the mean, which is the average of their shell life. Also, here told you that the average, that means it's related to mean. So population mean, we're going to use mu to represent it. So the mu is going to be the average days of shell life for every apple or all apples at Trader Joe's in Olympia. But again, remember that population is very hard to attain, is unrealistic. So what's more realistic is we sample some of the apples. I'm going to use different colors of pen. So for some of the apples, we may pick Honey Crispy for 10, and then another Fuji's apple for another 20, and trying to investigate and keep track on their shell life. So this is going to be our sample, which is we pick maybe 10 apples from different type to keep track on their shell life. So the quantity of interest, again, since this is a numerical data, so we are going to use mean, right? Since this is a sample statistic, which means we're going to use X bar. Oops. So the X bar is the apple that we picked, which is the apple that we picked, the average days of shell life for maybe there are totally 3 types of apple that they sell in Trader Joe's. So that means totally we have 13 apples for our samples. Okay, so here is how do we analyze data. Remember that when it comes to categorical data, we are more care about proportion, which means how many percentage of people. Proportion is related to percentage. So that means how many percentage of people is going to be agreed that, or support the new recycling law. For the second one, it's more like numerical data that we're connecting. So when it comes to numerical data, we're more interested in investigate their mean. Okay, that's it for today's lesson.